everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome back to my shop as we start getting back into getting things back together. We got the Bridgeport that I'm going to start working on, getting it back together and getting it all back to actually operating again. And before I get into actually putting all the work into it, making it heavier, while I have the base or the column sitting here, one of the projects that I had from before when it was still fully assembled was to build a mobile base for it so I can kind of just shift it around a little bit. I really like having the Bridgeport in a corner. It gives you a really good use of the space because the whole thing kind of nests really nicely into the corner. Downside to that is that if your workpieces start to get long, like longer than a table, you can't do anything on them because the walls get in the way. So the way that I solved that at the old shop was when I moved the Bridgeport in, I had it up on half-inch pipe, and I left it on the pipe so that I could kind of scoot it around with a pry bar and tip it away from the wall in either direction to get longer workpieces. If I want to drill holes on the end of like a 6 or 8 foot long workpiece, I could do that. That didn't really work that well because it's sitting on pipe the whole time. You don't really have any rigidity. So an actual base that is mobile when you want it to be mobile and stationary when you want it to be stationary is what we're going to be working on this time. Again, easier to do this now when this thing only weighs like 700 pounds versus when the whole machine is assembled and it weighs 2,000 or whatever. So here are a look at the components that we're going to be using. I had to find all these things. I bought all this stuff in 2019. And I'm actually surprised I could find everything: the angle iron, the casters, and the leveling feet. So the idea here is they'll make a frame that the machine sits on out of this angle, and then we have the second piece of angle, which is going to create a little riser for our casters, so they'll be able to be mounted to this frame with these caster mounts. And then when you don't want to use the casters, you have the leveling feet, so you can level the machine and get it nice and stationary and nice and rigid. And these leveling feet are going to be really useful for me in this space because this is a 3-car garage. The floor is set up to be sloped towards the middle and out, so every bay, any water or snow melt off of cars flows out of here. So putting this thing in the corner, that corner is actually twisted, so that'll allow me to have 4 points of contact on the floor versus if I had nothing and I just set the machine in the corner, I'd have to shim one of the corners of the base to actually make up that difference so it didn't rock on the uneven floor. So I'm going to get started by making the caster mounts. So this piece of angle is sized so that when the caster's on here with the edge flush on this side, the caster can still swivel through there. That's kind of important. Otherwise, I mean, you can do it. You'd have to put the caster somewhere out here and you would kind of run out of room for your mounting holes or whatever. So this piece of angle is 6 by 3.5, and that is the perfect size, so there's just enough clearance right there. So we're going to make these mounting block things first. So I need to know how long to make this, and one of the things I'm going to add to this is a little brace or bracket or whatever you want to call it on here so that some of the load is transferred back down just to kind of triangulate things and further support the mount. So I need to know how much clearance I'm going to need for this thing. So I have this set up so that when I have a 1/4 inch thick brace, I have a 1/4 inch between it and the start of the caster, and that will give us some room for the weld bead to kind of go before the caster gets on the way. And that caster just clears this as it swivels around. So we'll make these later on, but now that I know how much space I need for each mount, I can cut the angle down to its actual length. I need 4 of those, and then I can go through and start drilling all of the mounting holes for those casters to actually bolt on to the piece of angle. To make getting these in the correct place a little bit easier, I have this upright tower thing here on the table. That'll allow me to butt the angle iron brace bracket thing against here, and then I can take my brace, drop it in place, and clamp it to this upright tower thing like this. And that'll hold it in place and make sure that my brace ends up nice and flush to the outside, and making sure it's not all twisted or rolled or whatever. It's nice and it's in plane nicely. So that's my setup for tacking. I'm going to run through and tack all these braces on here, and then weld them all out. While those are cooling down, I'm going to get started on the frame that's going to go underneath the casting. And, you know, for bonus artistic points, I don't necessarily want my frame to come to a sharp corner. I actually want to clip the corner so it's got 8 sides technically. So it's just a little bit more ease through here. I think it'd be really cool to have the frame follow this curve perfectly as well, but that's a little bit more than I really want to worry about right now. So we're just going to create a frame with 8 sides, and the 4 sides that go in the corners are going to be pretty short. Miter angles on these are just going to be 22.5 degrees. So I'm getting this thing set up in the fixture table, and the nice thing about having a table like this is this grid pattern allows you to use it to make your parts exactly as you want them to be. So in this case, this is kind of a weird geometry, so setting up the stops here allow me to make sure that both of my sides are parallel and the whole thing isn't racked or a parallelogram or something weird like that. The other thing I can do for you is that because you know it's all based off of fixed dimensions, so these stops allow you to set your pieces to the exact size they need to be. So I've been working with inside dimensions this whole time. I know my material is a 1/4 inch thick, so I add a 1/2 inch on to the overall thickness, and then I can kind of work backwards from there and subtract sizes with these shims to get these stops at exactly the right spot, so that when this gets butted in here, my inside dimension is exactly what I want it to be. That's all nice and everything, but then you get to the side of like, well, if things don't work out perfectly in this perfect grid pattern, something might be wrong. So in my case here, I tried to bring in my little corner pieces, and you can see this one doesn't even fit in here. So you automatically know that something is awry and something is wrong. And in this case, this was cut about 1/8 of an inch too long by whoever was running that saw. So you know this is too long. This needs to be adjusted to actually fit in here because this is the actual length that part needs to be. I already checked these, so if I bring this guy over here, this is the right size. What it should be, that fits where it's supposed to. So I need to make some adjustments to my little corner pieces, but this is the first time I've actually used the fixture table like the proper way, like this. And yeah, everything I say about this is accurate. This is so much better. This is quite a way to work. It's so methodical, and it kind of leads you in the right way where your pieces and your parts are going to come out exactly as you intended, and you don't have to really leave anything up to chance that it's like out of square or out of parallel or some weird shape that it's not supposed to be, or the wrong size when you're done. All that stuff is kind of taken care of by this weird hole pattern. So this is all tacked up and sitting here, and now I kind of have to decide if I am confident about the sizing I've done here, or if I want to do a test fit before actually welding all the stuff out. And because it's kind of easy enough to do a test fit, I think we're going to do that. We'll just take this outside and set the column on top of there. Normally, I think if you're making a base for something that's not a casting, this is going to be a lot easier, because the sides should be straight and parallel and somewhat square and whatever. The casting is a casting. It's imperfect. The front and back have curves in them. The sides are not consistently straight either. So it's got sort of a bow belly kind of shape to it. And I have no idea if the front and back are actually parallel, like this base is parallel. I did oversize this a little bit, but who knows? I guess we're going to go up and over the vise. Didn't really think that one through. Oh my God. if I can get it to. Yeah. That's not bad. It actually fits. So I got just a little bit of room in here because this front part is curved. I got a lot of extra space here in the back. So I think that's about as good as it can get. All right, well that was a fun adventure. At least I know now what it's gonna be like to permanently install this thing in here. I'm gonna need some softer hands to help adjust and go in so I don't scratch my paint job, but I think I'm ready to weld this thing out. And the welding table's already sitting out here in the driveway. Perfect. Before we start adding the wheel mounts and the leveling feet and everything, one thing I want to add is something here in the corners to at least pick up the locations of the bolt holes that we're going to use to hold the machine casting down to the base. We're going to use the holes in the base that you can use to bolt the machine to the floor to this thing, and I should have attached something in here before when we had a test fit going because I could have marked the locations of the bolts at that time. Now the bolt holes from the casting to the base, but you know, here we are. So I really only need a little bit of material in the corners just to pick up where that bolt's going to go. But I have a lot of this flat bar stock, so I'm just going to use a whole piece like this. I just clip the corners so it fits in there, and we'll just weld that in place, and that'll just give a place for, you know, the bolt to pass through and grab. So now I can work on getting the wheel mounts attached and figuring out where I want the leveling feet to be and where everything needs to be. The setup for this is how I have it set up. So I want the base to have a ground clearance of 3/4 of an inch. So I have the whole base sitting up on 3/4 inch blocks right now. So that raises it off the table. The same amount of ground clearance that I want to have later on. I also know my casters, they add 4¼ inches to the, or they're 4¼ inches tall. So I have here are some blocks that are at 4¼ inches tall, sitting on this extension area here. So that would allow me to position the brackets at the correct height that I want them to be, so that the base ends up with the ground clearance that I actually want once the caster's attached, because those spacers are the same height as the caster. The frame is the height off the floor I want it to be. Once the caster's on here, this is exactly the setup that it'll end up being, and you'll have exactly this proportion between the ground and the caster and all of that. So the only thing I have left to do is to decide where I want the actual casters to go and where I want the leveling feet to end up when we get those attached. So I at least know what I don't want. I don't want the casters or the leveling feet, mostly just the casters. The feet are kind of smaller, but I don't want the casters out on the front of the machine. as you're standing there working close to the machine. I think these just kind of get in the way, and you'll end up like catching your feet on this, and it's just, this I think would be kind of obnoxious sitting here out front. So I'm leaning towards the sides, at least on the front, and I could put the casters out the back on the back side, but I think I'll probably still stick them out the side on here. Now, as far as the leveling feet go, one thing to note about the casting or the base only contacts the floor right at the corner for like a few inches on either side. The whole middle area on the sides and the front and back are cut away so that the only contact points are on the corner. So I want my leveling feet to be as in close proximity to those corners as possible. I thought about maybe putting them off the corner like that. That might be kind of a good spot for them. It'll pick up really close to the loads, but I could also scoot them over to the side and put them next to the casters there, which also kind of gets them out of the way. I'm going to think about this a little bit, and then I can go ahead and start actually attaching all of these brackets in place. I have the caster mounts just tacked on for now because I want to fully kind of mock this up before I weld everything out solid. So I've kind of decided on just nesting the leveling foot right in over here, and the wheel is outside of the pivot of the caster is outside of the position of this. No matter what height it's at, it'll always miss kind of right in here. So I have this little cardboard template that I'm going to use to actually make the parts. I need a little bit of a clearance area here. So when I put this thing in here, kind of down in here with the material, the caster still misses it, so it gets it out of the way. And then the center of my leveling foot is right around there. So I gotta make 4 of these. I have this 3/4 inch thick bar stock that I just have. So we're gonna lay out and pre-make essentially 4 of these. We'll lay out 4, drill the holes first, and then we will start cutting it all to size. None of the tap wrenches I have are big enough to grab this shank. I ordered a bigger one. It's not going to be here for a few days. So in the interest of continuing along, we're going to see how this goes. Oh, this one's a different size. A little bit. Okay, I made a little bit of a mistake. Maybe not a mistake. Let's call it an oversight. That sounds a little bit better than a mistake. So my original intention with this little block was to have it be able to be welded kind of in this position here, so that it's just got a little bit of a step here somewhere for some weld to go, and then you got this big beefy thing right there by the floor, and you have the ability to weld it to this bracket as well to give it some more bracing on the sides. What I didn't consider was let's call it the dead height of the leveling foot. So from the bottom of the pad to where the threads start, that distance is bigger than I anticipated. So if I did this, I would have a block, it's perfect like that. That's great. But that's with it dragging on the floor. If I want the leveling foot to have the same ground clearance as the frame, when it's fully retracted, this block needs to be up in the air somewhere in here. I put a 3/4 piece there. Now that puts the block way up here, and there is this hole here. So, I mean, it's not really a big deal. I'm going to fix this, so I'm going to do something to make it work, but it's not quite as clean and neat as I was hoping, with the block just being a nice little extension of the frame like that. That's going to be a little bit cleaner than what I'm going to have to do here. So the block will end up somewhere in here, and I'll take some flat bar and basically just extend the, whatever you want to call it, part of the angle here. So we have the same lap connection going forward, and then we'll have this step up here where I could actually put my weld between the block and this riser piece, and we'll have some seams on both sides here to weld to. So that's the plan right now. I think it might look okay. We'll see. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep these blocks, get them all ready to go, and then I have to weld out the caster seams first to get that kind of out of the way. Then start laying up the parts for the leveling feet mounts. And I think for those, I'm going to switch to stick welding, because that block is 3/4 inch thick, and I just feel a lot more comfortable with my stick welds strength more than anything, since the entire weight of the machine as it's running is going to be sitting on those 4 points. I want to make sure that area is as good as I can make it. And with stick welding, I can actually see my penetration. I can make sure I'm getting really good connection between all parts that make up that mount area. Plus, I like stick welding. It's a much more relaxing and slow process. It's more calming than MIG welding, for me at least. I feel like stick welding is like a nice walk in the park. You have time to look around and see the wildlife and the trees. And then MIG welding is like you took a jet through the park. You got through the park really fast if that was your intention, to get to the end as quickly as possible, but you missed all the scenery along the way. So here's how that all worked out. I have a pretty good amount of cleanup to do here. Get rid of this corner, just make it a little bit less pointy and sharp in places, and then we are just about done. Okay, the last thing I want to do is set the base up so that I can bolt this casting to it, so that I make sure that they're together and there's no extra spaces for vibrations to happen or whatever. The issue with, or what makes it more complicated, is the fact that this casting has this draft angle on here. So you could line things up and get a measurement of where all the holes are in location to each other. That just sounds like a little more work than I want to do right now. So I think the easiest thing for me is going to be to put the casting back onto the base and just transfer the bolt holes from the casting to the base, and that'll show me where I need to. I'm just going to weld a nut onto the mobile base in the right spot, and then we can put the casting back on it again and see if everything lines up. And if it does, we're done. So this thing actually rolls really nicely. Of course, this is only like 1/3 of the final total assembled weight, but we're just looking for it to just move around a little bit here and there, just to reposition it as needed for whatever weird work pieces we'll be using. So that's where I'm going to leave this one. We'll be carrying this through to the reassembly of the Bridgeport. So in the next little Bridgeport episode, I will be begrudgingly painting the whole thing. And then we can get it reassembled and moved on from there. I'm happy to have this little side project finally done, get these parts that have been floating around for 6 years finally assembled into the thing that they're supposed to be. And it was nice to do a little bit of a different type of project than I've been doing for the last however long. So it was nice to get back into making things out of steel, and that's where this one is at. So next time it's Bridgeport work stuff, actual Bridgeport work, not just Bridgeport accessory stuff. So thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Any questions or comments on the Bridgeport mobile base thing, or anything here in the shop or whatever, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking, or metal, or do what you want.